Report on water supply conditions. Good afternoon, Anne.
Afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the board. It's difficult to come before you all today with such a poor water supply update so early in the year. But May is historically a month of abundance. In an average year, we would still be in the middle of spring runoff with more water available than needed for irrigation. You can switch the slide. However, as this NRCS map of basin snowpack conditions illustrates, there's very little snow remaining in the basin today. You can switch the slide again. Oh, I've got the clear. I'm in control. Let me test it first. Okay. All right. This graph shows snowpack conditions throughout the year at the Cumbres Trestle Snowtell site. That black line indicates 2026 snowpack conditions. This gauge is located on the Colorado-New Mexico state line at about 10,000 feet above sea level. Snow had all but melted from this site by mid-April, and today there are 0 inches of snow water equivalent at the Cumbres Trestle, and the average for this site in mid-May is about 15 inches. This year, peak snowpack conditions basin-wide were significantly below average, and above average temperatures in March caused an early snow melt. I guess I should see on that one, sorry. This shifted spring runoff earlier in the year, bringing us now into early May with significant water supply shortages. This hydrograph shows measured discharge at the USGS Rio Grande at Otoe gauge upstream of Cochiti Dam over the past month. Discharge measured at Otoe is 350 cubic feet per second, which compared to a historical average of 2,700 cubic feet per second for this date. So you can see those triangles at the top of the hydrograph show the median condition for each date. Below Cochiti Dam, inflow into the Middle Valley is 320 cubic feet per second, while MRGCD agricultural and conveyance demand is 700 cubic feet per second. The prior and paramount demand today is 190 cubic feet per second. Middle Valley water supply it's only 110 cubic feet per second above that prior and paramount demand. So in other words, less than half the water that is needed for irrigation is entering the Middle Valley today, and 60% of that water has been tagged for Pueblo use. I expect inflow to continue to decline as temperatures climb. Initial drying occurred in the Santa Caucha Reach more than 45 days ago. As of yesterday, there were 34 river miles dry in Santa Caucha and 9 river miles dry in the Isleta Reach. And river channel drying in Albuquerque is imminent. This hydrograph shows measured discharge at the USGS Rio Grande at Albuquerque gauge over the past month. This gauge is an important indicator of both overall water supply and Albuquerque Reach drying. When flows measured here are below 450 cubic feet per second in late spring and in summer, it indicates there's not enough water in the system to meet the needs of Middle Valley irrigators. Albuquerque River drying has been observed when discharge measured at this gauge drops to 40 CFS. Today, measured flow is about 50 cubic feet per second, which compared to today's historical median of more than 2,000 cubic feet per second. Yesterday, flow at this gauge did also briefly drop to 33 cubic feet per second, so we're right on that drying threshold based on flows measured at this gauge. River drying in Albuquerque has only occurred twice since the early 1980s, in 2022 and in 2025. In both those years, initial drying did not occur until July. The only storage water available to MRGCD is the San Juan Chama water. MRGCD has 3,600 acre-feet of San Juan Chama water in storage. The total allocation for San Juan Chama contractors in 2026 is expected to be about 30% of a full allocation, or approximately 6,200 acre-feet for MRGCD. Because San Juan Chama allocations are made monthly as the project produces water, MRGCD has not yet to receive its entire 2026 allocation. Because the limited volume of MRGCD's 2026 San Juan Chama allocation and the fact that MRGCD hasn't received the entire volume yet, releasing San Juan Chama water this year will provide no meaningful benefit to MRGCD's overall water operations. MRGCD does not have native storage water available because of this year's poor hydrologic conditions. However, even if conditions had been more favorable, MRGCD still would have been unable to store native water in 2026 because of Rio Grande compact restrictions. Looking to the weather, our 7-day forecast looks hot and dry. There's some limited chances for precipitation. And our 2-week outlook appears somewhat more promising for rain, but still likely hotter than average. And the 3-month outlook through July indicates the basin is likely to experience a hot but wet summer. The forecast for rain is good news because MRGCD will be reliant on rain inflows for the rest of the season to continue delivering water for non-Pueblo irrigation. In summary, MRGCD wishes it had more tools available to meet the needs of Middle Valley irrigators, but due to unprecedentedly low water supply conditions, irrigators should expect extended periods between irrigation deliveries unless rain inflows increase available supply. I will ask everybody to pray for rain, and I will stand for questions.
Thank you, Ann. Director Dunning?
Last week, there was actually snow in southern Colorado, but it didn't do anything. It didn't help.
Chair Kelly, Director Dunning, I wouldn't say it didn't help. I think we thought we'd be in a much worse position by this time this year, but these small little shots of snow and rain that we've been receiving have not increased available supply significantly, but they've sort of let current conditions drag out a little longer than anticipated. So it's helped, but it hasn't been the boon that we were hoping for.
Directors? Well, Ann, I was coming back from Farmington 2 Fridays ago, and about 4 in the afternoon, the big arroyo on Santa Ana Pueblo below the National Guard site had a flow of water in it. And I don't know if that's coming off of the Mariposa subdivision or a bunch of pavement somewhere, but it stunned me to see that we had enough water to fill up the initial abstraction and start water moving over the ground. So let's keep our fingers crossed.
Chair Kelly, maybe that's primed the system a little bit. So if we can get another storm, maybe it'll generate more than it otherwise would.
Let's hope so. Okay, next item. Let's talk about this pitiful amount of San Juan Chama water that wouldn't make it to the first farmer if you released it right now.
Yeah, before 2020, MRGCD typically received its current San Juan Chama allocation supply and saved it for release in the following year. That was a pretty historical practice. But in 2020, conditions were, they thought historically poor, but we've experienced similar years since then. And the decision was to release the current year's San Juan Chama allocation once it got down to that situation. And ever since then, we've been in a situation where we're releasing the current year's San Juan Chama allocation. And in this year, because the allocation is so small and because water supply conditions have declined before we really had a sizable amount of water to release, we don't feel like there's a huge overall benefit to the operations of the district to release this year's San Juan Chama allocation.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, another way of saying it is because we didn't have the water, if we would have had the water, we would have injected much sooner into the system to bring about a broader benefit to the whole valley. Now the benefits of getting it by a trickle and not even being able to get all of it. As Ann said, we're going to get deliveries over every month, and the practicality and overall strategic benefit of that water to the whole valley is really doesn't exist. And we would have probably, to be able to do that, we would have injected that water into the system before now.
So back in 2020, I remember we had this discussion and it seemed it was the concurrence of the board to release the current year's San Juan Chama water in the same year. And now you're asking that we put it in the bank and perhaps we can be more effective with it next year. Directors, do I see everybody's concurrence on it?
Question.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Chairman. Jason, how much of that water would be released if it would injected into the river? How much?
Well, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, if we're trying to make the impact on the community, we should be releasing enough of it to bring up the river to flows where all 4 counties could benefit. So right now the flow is, we said, what was the discharge?
Right now, available supply is about 350 cubic feet per second.
And what's the supply for, what's the supply for, ag?
It's 700 cubic feet per second. So it'd be a release of approximately 700 acre feet a day.
So the ability for one to get it into the system, and typically what you're doing is as the hydrograph is falling, you're reducing the rate at which the hydrograph falls by injecting water in the system. But now the hydrograph has fallen to such degree, introducing it in and being able to sustain the volume. Because remember, water delivery is not just a diversion, but it's a volume behind the diversion to keep the diversion going for a period of time. So we may be able to release 700 CFS for, 400 CFS for how many days or how much?
Like 5 days.
Yeah. So 5 days. By getting anybody started on that, you likely wouldn't get even an area moved through before they would start irrigation, and then that volume would just bottom out. And that's where we are. Normally, we would have, to make the best use of that, we would have injected it into the system early on to keep water levels higher so people could efficiently deliver while water levels were on the descending limb, not basically we're basically at the bottom now, Director Hiron, and trying to use a small quantity of water to prop back up a system that's basically reached its bottom is, I think, a waste of water.
Thank you, Chairman.
Chair Kelly, Director Brown, I think
Yes, sir.
Director Huron?
it would be good because we've been managing these, getting these trickles of water throughout the irrigation season ever since 2020. And I think we'd be able to provide a little more certainty at the beginning of next year. This is the amount of water we have to work with, and we're not waiting to receive allocations.
So what have they allocated as of right now?
As of Chair Kelly, as of today, we've received a little over 2,000 acre feet of this year's allocation, and we had about 1,800 left over from last year. I think we will receive another 1,500 acre feet on the 15th of May. So it's not a large quantity of water.
And that'll stay up in Heron or be in Abiquiu?
Chair Kelly, we would likely leave it in Heron until the end of the year when we'd move it into Elvado to help them maintain their minimum reservoir elevation to keep those intakes covered.
Also less evaporation at the higher dam.
Correct.
Okay, so directors, think you've got our concurrence with your plan. Proceed.
Chairman, thank you very much.